My name is Mark Hayes. I'm the creative director of Sassoon, and the Dandies collection really started out life as a way to use the techniques that are included in our ABC barbering DVD series. And I thought it would be quite interesting to see how the creative team would interpret men's haircuts for girls, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a revolutionary new idea. But I did think that when I was working on the barbering DVD series, it became very apparent to me that not only are the finished looks on men's hair quite different, the actual methodology used to achieve them is completely different as well. And I thought it would be interesting for the team to use those techniques on girls to see what we kind of come up with. So that was the kind of overarching concept for behind the whole thing. And then for a setting, I kind of thought that what might be interesting is to use various themes of menswear, clothing wear, in different ways for girls. So we came up with this idea of using men's style, men's fashion for girls in different ways, and decided to split the collection down into 3 different themes. And the first one we kind of thought of was we were looking at a very particular period in history, around the turn of the 19th century, and there was a whole sea change in the way men looked at that time. Before that, it was very dressed up, it was very over the top, and they were actually called male peacocks, because they were so flamboyant. And there was a gentleman called Beau Brummel who kind of changed all that, and he started to have his clothes made in Savile Row. And the whole silhouette of menswear became much more streamlined, and in a sense heralded the idea of custom-made suiting from Savile Row in London, which is obviously still with us today. So there's that idea of craftsmanship. And we decided to call that part of the collection Jockey Club, because that was the meeting place in Paris where basically men, very wealthy, well-to-do men, used to go to discuss horse racing or leisurely pursuits, but it very quickly became a place where men just went to show off their latest Savile Row tailoring, and so it was it was almost like a male capital in a way. And the Dandies, Charles Baudelaire, the poet, said that the dandy elevated aesthetics to a living religion. So it was all about style, it was all about detail, and I could definitely see parallels with how I look at menswear today. And I think there's a lot of the idea of authenticity, not just in menswear actually, but in fashion generally. I think the idea of authenticity, I think the idea of individuality is very much part of certainly what we do, and I think certainly what's going on in the larger fashion world. The Jockey Club, from a specifics on the hair, I could see it being dark, very, very groomed, using the idea of short, barbered, Eton crop type shapes, with a lot of shine. We almost tried to get the colours to be like the reflection on a top hat, that really brilliantine sort of shine. So we had colours like dark brown with bottle green, or black with navy blue in the hair. So getting that really shiny, beautifully detailed. And then we threw a little sort of punky aesthetic, you'll see on the show, a little punky aesthetic into it as well. I think it's always interesting when you take 2 seemingly disparate things and put them together and create this kind of funny hybrid. So it's almost like Beau Brummel or Charles Baudelaire meets Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols, that sort of idea. So that was the first look. And then the second look, by contrast, we used the idea of workwear. There's a book by a guy called August Sander, who is a German-Austrian photographer, who basically went around and photographed all of the people going around their normal everyday lives in Germany and Austria in like sort of 1920. So you've got these, and that was also used extensively by a fashion designer called Yohji Yamamoto, a Japanese designer, who uses that book as his inspiration. I've always loved the idea of using very basic, everyday, almost utilitarian garments in a fashion context. So we had like donkey jackets, dungarees, big oversized kind of workwear. But to make it interesting and more conceptual, I took a leaf out of the book of Martin Margiela, the French fashion designer, and stripped all the colour out of it. So all the clothes are white, but they all have this kind of workwear kind of aesthetic. And the hair, in contrast to the Jockey Club, where the Jockey Club was slick and shiny and dark, the roustabout, which is what we call this part of the collection, which was the collective term for itinerant workers during America's Great Depression. Roustabout is matte, it's textured, it's kind of got this very unusual, it's longer, whereas Jockey Club was very short and barbered. This was kind of very almost unkempt, a little bit kind of funny, very pale colours, like washed out greys, pastel like pinks and pale blues, almost moss green, those kind of really odd colours, all on these kind of very funny matte textures. And then the third element of the collection, we've got the historical Jockey Club, we've got the slightly art abstract roustabout. So I thought we needed something that was a little bit more street, still looking at menswear, a little bit more street, a little bit more sort of using the street style, which I think is always interesting. So we looked at a very individual street culture that existed in London predominantly, although it became well known in the rest of the world, called suede heads. And suede heads were put in between the skinheads of the late 60s and the glam rockers of the mid 70s. So we're looking at sort of 1972, very specific period. And suede heads kind of came after skinheads. So where skinheads had obviously no hair, hence the name skinheads, suede heads grew their hair out a little bit. Where the skinheads wore an MA1 flying jacket, the suede heads wore a Crombie, like an Edwardian Crombie coat, with a Ben Sherman button-down collared shirt, with white stay-pressed trousers and Italian loafers. So it was all about style, it was all about detail. And they had a haircut, they developed their own haircut, and it became known as the Chelsea haircut. And it was cut down very, very short on the inside, not cropped like the skinheads. And the boys used to grow the sideburns really, really long. So very short hair on the inside and long sideburns on the boys. And girls, obviously, because they can't grow facial hair, they grew the sides of their hair really long. So you've got a crop with these really long pieces on the side. And I just thought that at the same time in Sassoon, we were experimenting with haircuts like the Mouche, Havington, which were all based on layers with long extended outlines. And so we've kind of taken the reference from that, really. So we've got three very different themes, very different looks inside one collection that's all based on the idea of men's hair or men's wear or men's style for girls.